Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 6th of November, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today's episode, we have some Dencun updates for you, or at least an ETH dev call update for you coming in here from Christine Kim. This is the All Core Devs call number 121, and her summary is posted here on Twitter and in a blog post. So basically, DevNet 11 is now up and running. There was a goerli shadow fork for Dencun on November 4th, so this update's from November 4th. DevNet 12 launched probably not till early December at this stage, so they are doing a 12th DevNet. You know, I didn't even think they were doing an 11th one, but it seems like they're doing 11 and 12, which makes sense considering that there was that change that I talked about last week to EIP 4844 that was going to require obviously more testing. And then Christine has her own opinion here that she's giving about the goerli public testnet launch apparently will not likely until after the holidays, meaning January, right? So I guess I was speculating that we would get goerli sometime in December, but obviously as that's going to be the holiday period, it becomes a bit difficult to coordinate those things and to make sure the right people are online in order for these things to go through smoothly. So it would make sense for it to be pushed to something like January, right? Maybe early to mid-January, I'm not sure. And as I said, this is Christine's opinion on things. I didn't actually listen to the call myself, but if she is saying this, then obviously I trust her judgment here. But then where does that put us in terms of kind of timing for mainnet? Well, as I've been saying to you guys, I didn't expect mainnet until, February at this point in time for Dencun. But I think I did actually say at one point that it could be pushed out to March, just depending on testing. Now, in saying that, we could do goerli early to mid-January, right? And then that goes through smoothly. Then we can do the next test nets, and then just one after the other, and then we can schedule mainnets. But timing-wise, I mean, if I'm being optimistic, probably like mid to late Feb at this stage, but more likely probably March if they're going to do a test net, if they're going to do goerli in January. If they do goerli in December, then Feb's still the target, right? But then I feel like if they do it in January, because they want to give like at least a month notice for people to update for mainnet, it pushes us into March pretty quickly, right? And it's kind of funny how, like, it keeps getting pushed out. And as I've said before, there has never been, like, a official timeline or anything like that. But it keeps getting pushed out for various different reasons. Obviously, the reasons have been, like, requiring more testing because this is a complex change. Not just EIP 4844, but the other EIPs as well. It's always a complex change. And Ethereum's such a big kind of network now. And there's so many different clients. You have to coordinate that. So, obviously, we want to make sure that we do all the necessary testing. But on top of that, as I mentioned last week, Terrence posted about some changes that the core devs wanted to make to 4844 to make it just a better mechanism generally and a better kind of upgrade generally, which they think, short-term kind of pain in terms of delaying, I guess, like the release of Dencun a little bit for long-term gain, which I think is okay. As I've said before, I don't think, at least right now, there's like a critical rush to get 4844 to get Dencun out the door. I think as the market starts to heat up, it becomes more and more pressing. And I do wish that we got it in the original timeline that I had kind of speculated on, which was November, which is obviously this month. But at the end of the day, that was just my personal speculation. And, as I said, like I could be wrong on that, and I was wrong on that. And I think that it's not because no one wanted it to happen. It's just because testing took longer than usual. We want to make sure that this that implementing EIP 4844 especially doesn't kind of bring any negative consequences to the network or anything like that, and it works as advertised, so to speak. But it gives the L2s more time to basically upgrade their stacks as well. I did mention the other day that there was a kind of Warpcast thread about OP stack being upgraded as part of the Canyon upgrade in order to take advantage of EIP 4844 or blobs generally, like as soon as it goes live. So, as many L2s as we can to get to that state, and then they're just like in a holding pattern until 4844 goes live, and then there's just a switch that they have to flip sort of thing to enable that. That would be really awesome, because then we get the benefits of it. Because, let's just say 4844 went live this month, right? Dencun went live this month, and like maybe one or two of the L2s were ready for it and the rest weren't ready yet. It doesn't really give us anything, right? It's kind of like a half measure. So there is that positive of we would expect the majority of the L2s to be ready to take advantage of blobs by the time Dencun goes live in probably, late Feb, sometime in March at this rate, and then we get the full kind of benefit of that upgrade rather than everyone kind of being like, oh, when's that upgrade going to hit my favorite L2, right? Which obviously I think is a huge positive there. But yeah, as I said, I'll keep tabs on this for you guys and keep you guys updated on this, but we are getting really close to the holiday period now. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you guys in terms of like the real holiday period. But generally in Australia, it runs from like mid-December to like mid to late January, I guess. It just depends on what industry you're in. But definitely over like I guess like 20th of December to like the 5th of Jan, the bulk of it, the bulk of the Christmas New Year period, that is definitely considered the holiday period. For Ethereum devs, they work everywhere, right? So it's kind of hard to tell what that's going to look like. But I think the bulk of it will definitely be between, I guess, the 15th of December to the 15th of Jan. So that month is basically what I would classify as the holiday period there, but it does vary from obviously country to country, culture to culture, depending on when you celebrate New Year's, when you celebrate Christmas, all that sorts of stuff. Or if you don't even celebrate Christmas, right? You celebrate other holidays around that period. But yeah, as I said, generally, I mean, because I'm in Australia, I know when it kind of gets celebrated there, that's when people like to take it easy. But from past kind of holiday periods, the Ethereum core devs do not take it easy. I think it's funny because like I feel like with the Ethereum core devs and researchers, it doesn't really feel like work to them because they're so passionate about what they're doing. And yes, they should be taking breaks like all of us should be taking breaks during the holiday period. I mean, the refuel doesn't actually stop during the holiday period for people who've been around for a while. I do it as much as I can. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've done it on Christmas Day before and New Year's Day. I don't think I've done it on New Year's Eve before. But yeah, I mean, I don't stop during the holiday period and I don't think the core devs do either because they're just super passionate, right, about it. Even though we should be taking breaks and we should be doing other things, right? It's hard to when you're that passionate about something. So expect to see work still being done during that period, but I doubt anything is going to get scheduled during, especially the big bulk of it of like December 15th or December 20th to Jan 5th. I don't expect anything there. That's why I'm saying we're probably going to look at a goerli testnet launch, maybe like mid-Jan or something like that, if we do it. But because that stuff requires coordination from pretty much like all of the core devs, right? So that stuff's only going to happen when most people are around, most people are on deck, most people are easily reachable, whereas I expect at least kind of like half to definitely be away from the computer, right? It'll definitely be on proper holidays, which, as I said, we should all probably be doing more, but it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard generally just because the market's heating up again, right? I think that it depends on what kind of person you are. If you're someone who enjoys kind of unplugging, or if you're someone who goes on a holiday and just sits on their phone and still does the same thing they do at home. I'm guilty of that, definitely. Like, I'll go somewhere else other than my home, but I'll still just sit on my phone and my laptop and still keep up with everything. I don't think I've ever personally unplugged from crypto since I got into Ethereum in 2017. Like, I feel like the longest I've ever unplugged was on a flight. I think it was a 20-hour flight. It was from London to Perth. I think that's the longest flight in the world. I think they do London to Sydney now, which is a bit longer. But I had no Wi-Fi on that flight. So it was like 20 hours of being completely disconnected. And other than that, I don't think I've ever been disconnected from kind of like Ethereum. I've always been on my phone. I've always had my phone with me. And people will say, that's not healthy, that you should take breaks. And I totally agree with that. But it's hard, guys. And I know you guys know how hard it is, especially when things are like happening and you're getting FOMO and stuff like that. But generally, I'm going to try to at least over the holiday period take a little bit of a break. But as I said, the refuel is going to continue. I'm not going to rug you guys on that one there. But anyway, moving on from that there to some other updates. This isn't really an update. It's more of just something interesting I came across on Twitter from Danning here, who works in data at Flashbots. So they started off the tweet by saying Ethereum's empty block percent dropped dramatically after the merge because we have better block space usage now. No more 2 ETH block emission rewards, no more empty block farming incentive, and MEV boost validator outsource block packing to builders. Competition brings better efficiency because, as you guys know, MEV boost is accountable for about 95% of block building on Ethereum today, but also pre-merge, when we were under proof of work, we had a probabilistic block time. So the target was 13 point something seconds, but generally it could be as long as, it could theoretically be as long as kind of like minutes, but usually it hung around the 13 point something mark. But with proof of stake Ethereum, we have deterministic block times with a hard target of 12 seconds. So a block will come in every 12 seconds. And if it's missed, it's missed. If it's not, it's not. It's still going to come in every 12 seconds because that's just the way proof of stake Ethereum works here. But as Danning mentioned, the big kind of, I guess, changes here were the fact that there was no more reward for empty blocks under proof of stake as there was under proof of work. And also we have this outsourcing of block building, which leads to a much better and more efficient market. And this is something that I think that is kind of a positive externality of outsourcing block building, where essentially you get the most efficient, most effective, most kind of like sophisticated block builders out there in order to build the blocks and present them to the network to be proposed. And that way you get better block efficiency generally. But of course, that comes with the negative externalities that we've seen, such as censorship on the network, right? Where because it's so centralized, censorship is a huge concern there. Because I think there's like, 5 block builders, and most of them unfortunately censor. And then you have the relays as well and stuff like that. So when you look at it like that, there are both positive externalities and negative externalities of the MEV boost network, or of kind of outsourcing block construction, block building generally. But the point is, I guess, is that like that's always going to be the case with Ethereum. That's actually part of Ethereum's endgame, where block production, block construction, we understand that just natural economic forces are going to centralize that no matter what we try to do. And that's true for every network that has MEV on it, aka every single network that has expressivity built into it. Even Bitcoin has forms of MEV, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, the design around Ethereum is assuming that block building will be centralized. And in that world, we accept that, okay, that's fine, it's centralized, but what are the negative externalities? Well, the biggest one is censorship, and that's why people are working on fixes for that, such as PBS and inclusion lists that I've talked about before, and potentially MEV burn, those sorts of things, to basically make it, or to disincentivize as much censorship as possible. But there are other ways to do that as well, through kind of like private transactions, stuff like that. But it kind of comes back to the philosophical argument around, should we force people that are, I guess, like participants in the network, whether they be validators or block builders, should we force them to include everything, or should we let them have the choice still? And I think that discussion is broader than I probably have time for on the refuel, but generally I take the stance of, I think that the network should be as credibly neutral as possible. I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything, but I also think that if the network is to be as credibly neutral as possible, you have to have it as part of the network kind of rules that transactions are not censored, right? And I know that there are some arguments that say, well, that's just forcing people to include transactions that they don't want to include. But at the same time, I feel like there's like a double standard here, where it's, okay, people are censoring, some of the builders are censoring Tornado Cash transactions. Most of the builders are censoring Tornado Cash transactions right now. Okay, but would they censor Uniswap transactions? Because these builders make a lot of profit from MEV extracted from Uniswap. So would they give Uniswap the same treatment? If OFAC censored Uniswap, would they censor Uniswap transactions? And I don't think they would, because if they did, their business would be deleted, basically. They wouldn't have a business. So they would either shut down their builders, and then that would make room for the builders that wouldn't censor, because censoring Uniswap is completely nonsensical based on the economic reality, right? Or they would censor it and then just get outcompeted by the builders that don't. So there really is like a ceiling to censorship here, because you can censor certain things like Tornado Cash transactions, which aren't time sensitive and aren't of high economic value for extracting MEV from, if we're talking about the builders' incentives here. But they're not going to censor Uniswap, because as I said, if they do, they're just going to automatically lose all their market share and kill their business. And if they want to do that, then that's fine. I mean, if they feel like they have to do that because they'd rather not end up in prison for breaking sanctions or whatever, okay, fine, do that. But the reality is that when it comes to block building, it is an economic game. The most profitable block builders are going to be the ones that can extract the most MEV, and they're not going to be able to extract the most MEV if they're censoring Uniswap, right? Like the biggest source of liquidity and source of MEV on layer 1 Ethereum, and probably on layer 2 Ethereum as well. But layer 2 is a bit different, because the sequences are centralized right now, so there's not really any opportunity to extract MEV there, because you're not able to build blocks there. But still, like, that's the way I kind of think about it. So I do think there's a ceiling here to how much censorship is going to actually happen based on economic factors, but we shouldn't just rely on economic factors. We should make it so that censorship generally is disincentivized on the network. That's what we're doing with things like PBS and MEV burn and inclusion lists and that whole kind of roadmap there, in order to make the network more credibly neutral generally. But yeah, anyway, that was a bit of an aside there, but figured I'd give you guys a bit of a kind of, I guess, educational recap on the state of things in the MEV/censorship kind of area of Ethereum. All right, so you guys may remember that I mentioned this kind of fix that went into the network, or I guess like went into clients a couple of years ago, for something called the late block reorg. So there was an issue on the Beacon chain, I think, early on, where there were reorgs happening with late blocks, and essentially the quick fix was put in place at the client level from memory. But now the fix is actually merged into the spec itself. So it's not just going to be part of the clients, it's actually going to be part of the network itself, which obviously is extremely positive because then the clients don't have to worry about this. It's just part of the consensus spec. So once it's built into the network itself, into the protocol level, the clients, it goes from the client level to the protocol level, and now it's enshrined in protocol. And by doing that, everyone's aligned. You know, when you build a client, you build it with it in the protocol. You don't have to worry about including it as something extra, and it just streamlines the whole process here. Now, you can go give Michael Sproul's tweet thread a read about this because he gives some great background on this and explains exactly what it is and why it's important and why it's good to have it in the main spec here. So I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so there, but not much more to say on that one because I can't explain it better than Michael did. For those of you who don't know, Michael works on the Lighthouse consensus layer client, so he is a core dev, which means that he does a much better job of explaining these things than I ever could. So yeah, go check out that thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, I mentioned this kind of experiment that Mario Havel ran last week where he was running a full node on a PlayStation 4, an Ethereum full node on a PlayStation 4, and he got a lot of attention on this and a lot of people interested in this that he made a guide. So there's a full-fledged guide here on how to actually do this yourself. Now, I haven't done this yet, even though I have an old PS4 laying around somewhere. I think it may be in my garage, but I could do it if I wanted to, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go through this whole process yet, but it doesn't seem like a big, a kind of like complex process. It's basically running through how to hack the PS4, aka jailbreak it, then basically installing a Linux distro on the PS4, and then running an ETH node, an Ethereum full node here. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go check out this guide. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Jasper from the Rocket Pool community has a really great tweet thread today going over all of the 4 major changes that are coming to the RPL tokenomics. Now, the RPL token has been a source of contention within the Rocket Pool ecosystem for quite a while now for a number of different reasons. I think big reasons include the fact that you need a decent chunk of it in order to become a node operator. It's very volatile price-wise, and because of that, the node operators have efficiency issues, right? Because you have to wait for it to get above a certain price for your collateralization ratio to be above the minimum so that you can spin up more mini pools, or you have to add more RPL collateral, and it becomes a kind of I'm not going to call it a death spiral sort of thing, but it becomes a kind of like cycle where you have to keep buying more to collateralize more if the price goes down, and then it can spiral a bit out of control, right? And not just that, the smaller node operators are punished even more with the current design of how things work on the tokenomics side of things. But thankfully, there are major changes coming. And Jasper does a great thread here on Twitter, which I'll link in the YouTube description below, breaking down all of these different votes that are going on right now and all of these different changes. Now, of course, these changes aren't going to happen all at once. Some of them are further out than others. I think that they're happening over the next 12 to 18 months as part of the massive upgrades that Rocket Pool is going under generally. I mean, it's not just the tokenomics, but it's the whole protocol. It's just going under a lot of upgrades to increase efficiency, to increase security, to better reward network participants for spinning up node operators and increasing the Aave supply, which has obviously been an issue in the past as well for anyone who has been paying attention to Rocket Pool. But yeah, anyway, that's just the high-level overview of what's kind of happening there. I highly recommend checking out Jasper's tweet thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below, which does a much better job of breaking down everything into into great detail. I mean, Jasper's threads are always great, so go check that out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Georgios from Paradigm announced today that OP Reth has been merged. So this in practice means that Reth, the high-performance Ethereum node that they've been building, can now be used as is in the OP stack. And this was made possible by collaboration with OP Labs, the base team, and Paradigm's own open source team. Benchmarks and more will be coming soon. So yeah, you can run a full Reth OP stack node just like you would run a full Reth Ethereum node. And this is achieved as well by the fact that the OP stack is EVM equivalent, essentially. It is very close to Ethereum in how it how it functions, Ethereum layer 1, I should say, or the EVM on layer 1. So it's much easier for these things to be constructed and to be built and to be released than it otherwise would be here. Now, Georgios has a few links to different things which you can check out. I'll link in the YouTube description below, as well as replying to a few people in the tweets about this and a few questions there. But great to see this. As I said, guys, we want clients for layer 2s and full nodes for layer 2s that people can run easily. We also want client diversity at these layer 2s because OP Labs has their own client. Now, Reth is a secondary client. And there's another one as well I remember I covered from A16Z called Magi, M-A-G-I, a while ago. So you can check that one out as well there. But anyway, I'll link this in the YouTube description below and you can go check it out for yourself. All right, so this is something that I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about today because there were a lot of different takes that I think could be given here, and I just wanted to give my high-level take on this. So this is about Aave. So Aave had a tweet thread over the weekend where they said, "Today we received a report of an issue on a certain feature of the Aave protocol. After validation by community developers, the Guardian has taken the following temporary measures, and no funds are currently at risk." So the Guardian is basically a multi-sig. I can't remember how many people are on the multi-sig, but it's a fair few people that exists for security issues. So if there is a critical security or critical bug or critical vulnerability in the Aave protocol, the Guardian multi-sig can be enacted in order to pause the protocol. And that's what they did here. So they paused Aave v2 on Ethereum mainnet, they paused certain assets on Aave v2 on Avalanche, and they freezed certain assets on Aave v3 on Polygon, Arbitrum, and Optimism. And they continue the thread here with a bunch of different kind of things here. And then I don't know if they've given a post-mortem as to actually what this bug was on Aave. I don't think that there is some information in the governance post actually, but I don't think there's been a full post-mortem yet because this is still quite fresh. But yeah, I mean, there was a high critical, I guess like high vulnerability, effect that affected Aave v2 here, which afterwards was raised to a critical. And then they obviously coordinated with the Aave Guardian multi-sig in order to freeze the affected kind of the affected contracts and the affected implementations here. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there is no post-mortem yet, so I can't really talk to exactly what the issue was. But what I wanted to talk about was the fact that this ability even exists and how people have reacted to this. So obviously, within, I guess, DeFi, we call it decentralized finance. There are a lot of different aspects of it that are not decentralized. You know, some protocols are just like fully not DeFi because they have a multi-sig that is owned by the team that can enact changes, you know, sometimes without a time lock, sometimes with a time lock, and so on and so forth, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't consider those to be DeFi at all, really, right? But DeFi is just like this catch-all term that we use all the time to describe all of these on-chain finance products. And, you know, back in the day when people were coming up with a name for on-chain finance, one of the names that was suggested was OpFi or Open Finance, on-chain finance. But DeFi, I guess, stuck for a few different reasons. One, because, you know, at the time in 2018, we were very starry-eyed about everything being decentralized, and we didn't realize, I think at the time, like how many things can't be fully decentralized, especially from day one. But also, DeFi sounds like defy, right? To defy the traditional system. I mean, it was just a meme that caught on, and obviously now it's unstoppable, and there's no way we're going to change it. But in terms of like the protocols that are deployed today, Aave is one of the most decentralized, right? It has a decentralized governance process, but at the same time, it does still have this Aave Guardian in place for critical security issues that, as I said, is only used for critical security issues. It is not used for anything else. It is not used to alter the protocol as part of normal governance operations or anything like that. It is only used as kind of like a last resort if there is a critical vulnerability that could result in a massive loss of funds, which is exactly what happened here. As I said, there's no post-mortem on exactly what the bug is yet, but I'm sure it was obviously big enough to justify the use of this Guardian. It's kind of like how I described the social layer of Ethereum layer 1 being like the final stop, the final kind of like, oh shit, we need to do something to fix Ethereum layer 1 because there's a critical bug. We would use the Ethereum social layer. We would coordinate in order to change the protocol to fix the bug, and then everyone would upgrade their software and so on and so forth. Whereas the way it works in Aave is that there's this multi-sig Guardian that has the ability to freeze certain assets, has the ability to pause markets, and then it has to go through the normal governance process to enact the change in order to fix these things and obviously unpause the affected markets here. So I personally think that this is a really good middle ground, to be honest, because Aave is not a new protocol. Like Aave v2 is not a new protocol. Aave v3 is obviously newer, but Aave v2 has been around for a long time. And there was still a critical bug in it. It doesn't matter how many audits there have been, doesn't matter how many eyeballs have been on the code, doesn't matter how many funds have been in there and what the honeypot was, there was still a critical bug discovered, thankfully by a white hat that reported it, to the Aave team rather than a black hat that exploited it, which just speaks to the point that when it comes to security issues of different kind of like contracts on Ethereum, having something like a Guardian, I think for quite a while is the best case scenario, because even though we can coordinate Ethereum layer 1 to, in theory, fix something that was to go wrong here. Like, for example, if someone was to completely drain all the Aave pools, in theory, the Ethereum layer 1 social layer could coordinate in order to reverse that, right? And I mean, to be fair, it has happened before with the DAO. Now, the reason why that's not going to happen now is because since the DAO, the Ethereum social contract has been no bailouts, right? No reversing anything, no interfering with the chain. Doesn't matter how big the hack is, doesn't matter how big the vulnerability is, doesn't matter how many funds are lost. The Ethereum social layer does not come together to fix what's built on Ethereum. It will only come together to fix a critical bug in the Ethereum protocol itself. It will not bail out individual protocols. It will not bail out Aave. It will not bail out Maker. And honestly, I don't even think it would bail out Lido if something was to happen there, where 30% of all the ETH staked was drained to someone's wallet or whatever. I don't think that would. I don't think the community would want to do that there. But obviously, it's a messy topic. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, blah, blah, and so forth. So that's why when it comes to the things built on top of Ethereum, they can't rely on Ethereum social layer to fix their problems. So they have to come up with their own way to fix their own problems. And a lot of the time, as I said, it is a multi-sig that is owned by the team, especially early on in the project, to make sure that they can obviously do upgrades, but also grow the project early on really fast, upgrade the project, and also protect against security issues. But then when you get to a certain size and you want to decentralize it out, you want to create a DAO, you want to have governance with your token and all that sorts of stuff, you still need something in place in order to address these security issues, and that's where something like the Aave Guardian comes in. So as I said, I'm fully in favor of things like this for a long time, even because we know that even after years, there can be critical vulnerabilities, because it's better to protect users using a method like this than it is to leave this bug in and then essentially have to go through the governance process and then fix the bug out in the open where it could be exploited by a black hat. Because the alternative here would be for this bug to be exploited by a white hat, right? And they'd have to do it and announce it as they're doing it in order to let people know that they actually haven't been hacked. It's just a white hat draining the funds in order to mitigate this exploit, because that's the only other way to mitigate it without a guardian in place to freeze or pause the protocol. They would have to exploit it themselves to make sure that the danger is no longer, in place. Then they could fix the protocol, and then they would return the funds to the protocol. Is that a solution? Yes. Is that a good solution? No, I don't think so. It would cause a lot of confusion. It would cause a lot of panic. The users would be like, holy shit, like you just took my funds, right? Like it would not go over well. So I think the Aave Guardian is the best we can come up with. A Guardian generally that is in place just for critical security issues is the best thing that we can come up with right now, and should be used for protocols, I think, for quite a while to come here. But that's my take on things. Maybe you guys have a different take, but I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out, and I'll make sure to highlight the postmortem once it is published there. All right, so I just wanted to highlight this blog post from Steve Dacker, who's working on the Ethereum attestation service. So this blog post is titled Relative Trust Networks, and Steve shared it on Twitter with the caption, in order to truly create a decentralized future, we need to know who to trust without relying on centralized authorities. And this article explores how it can be effectively done with Ethereum attestation service. So I've talked a lot about this in the past. I'm definitely not going to recap everything that I've said in the past about this, because I'm already at time here. I'm almost at 30 minutes. But you can read this post to kind of get a gist of what is going on here. But the TLDR is that we need some way to have on-chain identity and on-chain Sybil resistance without relying on things like KYC or centralized intermediaries or other such things like that I guess like not only compromise privacy but give power to centralized entities. And that's where Ethereum attestation service comes in. So you got to give this blog post a read. I'll link in the YouTube description below. And yeah, I mean, I highly recommend giving it a read there. All right, so just the last up here, you guys know I'm attending that Crypto Assembly conference in Sydney at the end of the month, or towards the end of the month. As I said, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of November, there will be no refuel as I will be at this conference. I'll be on basically a lot of different, I don't know if I'd call them panels during the day, but I'm definitely going to be center stage for a lot of the second half of the day on the 23rd. So starting from 2 p.m., I'm going to be doing something called Unsettling the Scene, which is basically talking TradFi at the front of the, basically talking DeFi at the back of the day, because TradFi is starting at the front of the day before 2 p.m. and then basically DeFi pulling everyone from 2 p.m. onwards. I have a panel with Kane Warwick, I believe. I'm going to be kind of getting involved with a lot of the other panels and stuff like that. It's going to be a good time. I love speaking on panels. I love speaking to people who don't really know much about, Ethereum, DeFi, crypto generally, like TradFi folks and stuff like that, and basically making them realize why we're all so excited about this technology. So I'm super, super excited for that. And I just had just before organized that on the 22nd, there's another crypto event going on as well, which is more, I guess, like not the crowd that we would be used to, but more kind of like trying to bridge the gap between the old world and the new world again. And I'm going to be on a panel at 4 p.m. with Mehdi from Sigma Prime, who builds the Lighthouse Ethereum consensus layer client. Hopefully that's recorded, so you guys can check that one out there. But yeah, I'm super excited for this event, guys. Like, I don't get to go to many crypto events and conferences, but when I do, I try to really make the most of it, because I just get too excited being around all the like-minded people. And it is such a better scene than being on crypto Twitter. You guys know my view on crypto Twitter. It's just a toxic cesspool. You go and have real life conversations with people. It's so much better, so much more constructive, so much more nuanced than stupid Twitter. I could rant about that for days now. But anyway, we're over time here. I'm going to end it there for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.